Happy Groundhog Day. Maybe in these last few weeks you have seen this same story repeat, the one where your favorite Christian author, who usually posts about whimsical life updates, pet photos, or upcoming release dates, suddenly and very fervently is posting about politics. Words get heated, the light dims, and unwise statements start disastrous brush fires instead of book delights. What should a reader do? Call for a ban on all such topics on social media? Block the blighter? Or maybe seek deeper wisdom?
Speculative fiction, like no other genre, reflects the creativity of God.
If you look at the scriptures, you're going to have to see that God uses imagination more than rational discourse.
We are supposed to be image bearers for a vastly creative God.
Reading fantastical fiction opened a portal in my imagination for a place other than just a materialistic world.
I experienced the gospel story with the mind of someone who loved adventure and loved the idea of light conquering darkness.
We're wired for stories that reflect how we see the world in ways that are true.
The story is either pointing to Christ or it's pointing to our need for Christ.
Ahoy again to Fantastical Truth, the delightful but sometimes dangerous podcast from Lorehaven.com, whose mission is to help you escape bad books and find the best Christian fantasy and sci-fi for the glory of God. I'm E. Stephen Burnett. This is my quest. I'm also an author myself, with my first novel, Above the Circle of Earth, launching last year from Enclave Publishing. I'm running the show solo today. Zach is at a conference over this chilly weekend. I'm the publisher of Lorehaven, and this is episode 298, Should Christian Authors Post About Politics? Part 1. I feel that I may have put off this topic for far too long. In fact, last year I actually wrote a very overlong article about this topic, trying to reckon with this for myself and other fans, but also with some application to my author friends, some of whom see this going on and maybe feel pressured to join in, or maybe feel unfamiliar with this, or maybe just want to have the whole thing over with. And I've been on all of those sides and will probably crisscross. But now I found that I think I've discovered some ground rules for this. And yet it's such a big topic that we are going to split this into 2 episodes. I am the solo captain for this episode, but next week, Lord willing, Zackary Russell will be back and we'll be able to engage about this, maybe talk over some feedback that we get from you, the listeners. So if you have a strong opinion on this, regardless of what it is, okay, this is the game. I want to hear that. So let me just put that right up front. I want to know your thoughts on should Christian authors post about politics, even before you hear mine. So go ahead and draft it up, email it to podcast@lorehaven.com, or send that to us on our socials. Follow at Lorehaven on all of those. Before I get started, though, I do have a mission update. Authors, we've opened the authorship. This is the vessel for training you to find joy and get good at making fantastical stories. It is sponsor supported in the Lorehaven Guild on Discord. And so I'm going to post about this in there. And then those of you who are members can go ahead and talk about this amongst yourselves. The Guild is not political, but it is okay to talk about talking about it. And so I think that may be our in there as we're wrestling with these topics. Go in there and have fun. And hopefully learn something or help us learn something. This week, we posted a review at Lorehaven.com. That is from Tisha Messing, and it's kind of a kid's Western story there, The Lost Chick. A bit of a Hank the Cowdog type thing, illustrated and all. It sounds like a really fun book. You can subscribe free to get those updates, and we'll also email you that exclusive code to join the Lorehaven Guild. We had that open throughout the month of January, but now January is over. And now you have to subscribe free to get in there. Meanwhile, we also have our new book from Enclave Publishing, The Restitching of Camille Dulaine, which is releasing on February 10, so just next week. A splintered world, a heart gone cold, hope reborn in threads of gold. After accidentally bridging the story worlds together, Emlyn Dulaine faces an impossible task: sever the connections without destroying the stories themselves. If she fails, the characters will be trapped in twisted versions of their tales, forced to relive their worst moments forever. But undoing the bridges is only the beginning. To truly fix what's unraveling, Emlyn must uncover the secret flaw buried deep in Rivenlay's foundation, something that's been wrong since the very start. And the danger has never been closer to home. The clock is ticking for the injured wyvern who needs Rivenlight air to survive, and the story boy Emlyn swore she'd never fall for. Emlyn and her team must rescue Frank and Laramie from chaotic, shifting story spheres before they are gone for good. There's more to that description for this new novel from Enclave Escape, which presents this highly anticipated sequel to The Unraveling of Emlyn Dulaine called The Restitching of Camille Dulaine, from the Carroll Award-winning author of the Weaver trilogy, Lindsay A. Franklin. It is available February 10, this coming Tuesday, wherever fantastic books are sold. Ask for it at your favorite bookseller or your local library, or order it online from Amazon. It's also available as an audiobook from Oasis Audio. You can see all those amazing sponsors in the show notes for this episode 298, including a newcomer that we're putting right up front because we love Realm Makers, and now registration is open for this year's Realm Makers Writers Conference and Expo. We love all our sponsors, but only one of them has a Writers Conference and Expo, and that's Realm Makers. Don't miss the premier gathering for Christian storytellers of fantasy and science fiction, calling all authors and artists in the industries of graphic novels, gaming, animation, and audio drama, as well as film and TV. Realm Makers is where you will find your tribe, own your craft, and advance your career. Registration is now open for this in-person and virtual event this June 24 through 27 at the St. Louis Union Station Hotel. Yes, we're back in St. Louis, and 1 month earlier than usual. Get 3 full days of training from professionals, plus the epic Realm Awards costume banquet to celebrate the best novels released last year in these genres. Readers, you are invited to the expo on Friday and Saturday, and while the writers obviously have to pay to get in and own their craft, shopping for the readers is free for the general public. So come on in. You can see all these amazing guests and storytellers, including, by the way, our big Lorehaven booth, and I'll be there as well with Above the Circle of Earth. Tickets, however, they are required to attend the sessions and panels, as well as meet and greets with special guests. You can learn more at realmmakers.com. You can also go to lorehaven.com and see that big banner ad we put right there on the front page. All right, speaking of big banner ads, one reason why we love Realm Makers is because although, well, I'll speak personally, okay? Although you will find people who share your thoughts, obviously, about Jesus, which is the most important thing, and the gospel and the reasons why we create and want to get good creating, there will be people who have different beliefs about how to apply this gospel that we all share in the political space or in the cultural space. And that's because Realm Makers, as well as I would say Lorehaven, is intended to be that middle space. It's not all the way to one side or the other, as if all of the world is Congress or the House of Lords or whatever, but because the world is something that we all share together. Some people have called it the commons. And if you ruin the commons, then things get really bad really fast, and things are already pretty ruinous out there. Let's not ruin it any further. So I'm going to do something we haven't done in a while on this show, and I'm going to open the concession stand. I'm still hanging on to some Christmas candy, and so hopefully this will go down at least halfway as sweet. I mentioned earlier that I thought I'd put off this topic for far too long. Well, that's because I was waiting for a cooling off period when people weren't getting all heated about this topic. Right now, though, I think actually people aren't talking about this topic. We're kind of assuming we already know who should say what about which topics, and then blazing forward and setting everything on fire. And so I don't think that there is going to be a cool time from that, but we are approaching this here in a very different way. The next best time may be now, when you, faithful listener, are probably already seeing some of this fervor spread among social media folks, influencers, Christian authors, and even some fantastical authors. I'm approaching this with attention to a much broader topic, by the way. We are focusing on Christian authors and influencers in all genres because it's all catching. We don't live in this sort of Christian fantastical author silo. We're all out there in, the common culture. And like I said, this is too big a topic for one episode. That's why we're splitting this into two. And by the way, this is a fan-focused episode. I realize that I just got here as a novelist myself, but I still think first as a fan. And I know that we have a lot of authors listening, and you may want to take some note. Maybe you want to get upset, but please, please, Jesus, help me. I want to approach this in a way that is going to be unifying, even as it is challenging. And by the way, I do know there are many fans who agree with my take on this, or who will find at the end that they agree. They may just not be saying so directly in the comment sections of these author sudden political posts. I think we may all, to a sense, grieve inflammatory rhetoric that has a great risk of spreading among members of this fandom. And I, for one, although I have my own strong takes on things, I don't want to see relationships broken, either friendships or even family relationships or business relationships, or more importantly, relationships in the body of Christ, the church. I want to see us discuss these things openly, but with respect. I would love to see us go underneath the surface issues that hit the headlines and stir us all up in order to ask about the bigger ideas and the bigger feelings, in order to think and feel more deeply there. But most importantly, and listen to the end of the show for this, I want to warn very sternly against nasty slanders that some fans or authors may either enable or commit. Because a lot of these are questions of wisdom. But when you get into issues of willful ignorance or lying about other people recklessly, well, now you're dealing with issues of sin. And sin does require repentance. It's not just a matter of wisdom. Sin means, okay, you were right and now you're wrong, and you need to repent and apologize to that person, and then maybe step away from your platform until you can practice righteousness as well as wisdom. I want to talk a little bit about my own background here, stuff that I probably don't talk about much on the podcast, because in my view, Lorehaven and fantasy novels and all of that, like I said, it should be a common space. There are certainly some overlaps with political questions and political popular cultures, but they're not the same thing. I do not believe in totalizing politics. In fact, I think that that is a very sick position that a lot of people who are kind of sick tend to hold. The best political leaders, by the way, make time for things that have nothing to do with politics. And that is a bipartisan statement there. Tripartisan, however many parties you have, your government may vary. But my personal background is that, yes, I have kept up with politics and headlines and news and controversies and debates, domestic policies, foreign policies, as much as I can since before I could vote. So starting when I was a teenager, I started listening to radio programs and reading articles and reading this paper device they used to send to your house called a newspaper, and getting very interested in these things. Personally, I've retconned the first election in which I voted to November 2000. That was actually before, yes, it was before I turned 18. But in my mind, I actually did vote in that election. And then I got a little bit more bold when I went to college and then university. I actually had a column in the student newspaper weekly, which is how I got a lot of nonfiction writing experience, by the way. And yes, I shared some hot takes, probably some ones that I would disagree with now, even if I agreed with the overall worldview beneath them, the foundation there. Anti-fans of my work even made at the time a Facebook group called E. Stephen Burnett Would Probably Hate Me. I don't think it's around anymore. So unfortunately, if you want to join, you're going to have to start a version 2.0 of your own. And today, as you may know, if you follow my social feeds, I do stay atop the news still. But my focus, at least the goal, which I may not always reach, is to emphasize those deeper issues. The phrase I've heard is, I want to tunnel under. I want to talk about the worldview, the moral assumptions, the philosophies behind these big headlines and these heated discussions. And for the record, yes, I actually do post, arguably, about politics. So don't hear me saying in this show or the next, oh, don't do it, politics bad, authors should never go there. Frankly, I think that authors shouldn't post about politics, or celebrities just need to keep their mouth shut and act in the movie or sing on the stage. I think people say that, or used to say that, but I don't know if we really believe it. It's like when we say, never judge a book by its cover, but then we all totally do. I'm not saying, let's go back to the old Saw. I'm saying, yeah, the old Saw was kind of dumb, or maybe it's outdated. The fact is that we do look to people who have achieved success in one area, whether it's a fantasy novelist or an actor or singer or somebody like that. We do look to them and we're curious about what they think about things. And sometimes what they think about things is pretty dense. And then sometimes actually that person turns out to be extremely talented. I'll give you a kind of a non-political example. Actor Ben Affleck was recently on the Joe Rogan podcast saying some really smart things about AI and studio filmmaking and all of that. And there's a clip that goes viral of him occasionally basically predicting the streaming revolution as far back as I think 2004. So don't write off an actor or an influencer as if they're just automatically a pretty face with no brain behind it. This isn't true. God has gifted many people many gifts, and sometimes that person who is attractive and charismatic also has a good head for these deeper issues. The trick is not to write them all off or listen to all of them or select which one you think is the prettiest. The trick is to actually engage with what they're saying and compare it with something that is more important for Christians, the foundation of Scripture and a biblical worldview, which, by the way, and this is so important, will lead Christians to different takes on things. And we've got to be wise and keep those different takes categorized as secondary issues. There are primary issues for Christians, which are gospel issues. Like if you firmly don't believe this, I don't know if you can call yourself a Christian. Some people call these salvific issues. And then there are other issues which are non-salvific, such as what should the tax rate be? What should the border policy be? Things like that. Scripture hints about how we might approach those things, but it isn't nearly as clear as issues like life or who men and women are, or what are humans supposed to do, or maybe even who is supposed to care for the poor and how. But there are ways Christians can debate these things, but as I think we'll see, they can also be very distracting. And we've got to keep in mind, now that all of us are basically influencers now on the interwebs, we've got to keep in mind, what hat am I wearing? Whose jersey am I wearing? Whose logo have I stuck on to my jacket? What does this look like? What am I signaling to people? And am I meeting the expectations of my audience? Am I loving and serving them, or just trying to be a big leader for them? So that's why here at Lorehaven, we've set a goal from the very beginning. We are not a political resource at lorehaven.com. We're not a political podcast. And that, by the way, I will say very bluntly, is to our detriment in a sense. The hotter the topic, the more listeners you get, no matter what people say about only wanting good news and fun, whimsical topics. Guys, if you make a heated topic like this one, you will get the listeners. I can say this from experience, and I have seen the bar charts, okay? But I also believe there are more important things than the political discussions. They have their place, but their place is not every place. The morality, the worldview, thinking matters more than the headline du jour and the controversy of the day. And for Christians in particular, the person of Jesus Christ and the character of God to which he calls all of his people matters just as much. I want to say a positive note, a little bit more about my thinking so far, which is in process, about why I do post occasionally about some political stuff. And I'll say more about this in the next episode, which I hope is going to be much more positive. I think I used to post more broadly about political stuff back even before Lorehaven, but Lorehaven has helped us sharpen my creative purpose. And so even now, when I post about certain topics, I try to run them through a set of limitations as well as what I hope are basic wisdom questions. My rules for my posts, and if I violate these, you can call me out. It's okay. Send up a flag in the comment section, and we'll have a friendly go about it. My rules are that the post needs to be based on biblical conviction, not some sort of partisan platform there. It needs to be focused on the topic more than personalities. And I think very important here, it needs to be focused on open engagement. All right. I don't want to post and then say, well, this is my take, but I don't want to have a fight in the comment section. I think that's actually kind of a cowardly approach, and I don't want to do that. By the way, I also want to focus on specific topics, which led to my post just a few days ago, January 30th. I've linked it in the show notes. about a activist styling himself a journalist named Don Lemon. I will name that name here, who was arrested and charged under 2 federal counts. There was one law actually originally relating to members of the Ku Klux Klan, bad guys, and then another law with some mixed motives called the FACE Act. And what had happened is this man joined a mob to invade a church. They kind of sneaked in apparently as if they were just regular guests of the worship service, a church in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area, City's Church. And then they stood up and started yelling at the pastor and yelling at the parishioners. And the federal indictment actually mentions that some of these activists were calling parents or talking to kids and saying, your parents are Nazis and they're going to hell. Going to hell. Slander against Christians in a church. And there was this guy acting like he was just from outside and happened to catch up. And then he's turning the camera off when they're making their plans. And sounds like he knew what he was doing, but we'll wait for the trial to bear that out. All right. The reason why I posted about that is this. I like the church. I like biblical Christian churches all around. Any denomination, if you love Jesus as revealed in the scripture and get the gospel at least 80% right where it counts, well, I like you. You're my people, all right? I'm not going to excuse everything you do if your false teachers are stupid, but overall, I consider you my people. And I don't like people who bully my people. This topic isn't just a matter of deep biblical conviction for me, by the way. It relates to my novel, which is kind of one of my guiding principles now is, does this topic in some way relate to the themes that I'm exploring in my fiction going forward? Or is it something just completely unrelated and serious, as if I'm trying to wear 2 different hats at the same time? I'm going to try to focus on the novel one way or another, even if it's tangential to the post itself. And related to that, I don't like it when professing Christians abuse the Bible in order to get at Christians they don't like, which includes people who impulsively see other believers as the bad guys and impulsively see anyone who protests them or mobs against them as the good guys. This for me is an absolute non-starter when you slander your own people. And you're going to see, or hear rather, my take on that at the end of this show. I'm going to try to be very firm, try to be very compassionate, but this is a matter of strong personal feelings for me and convictions there. I think, too, this can be a nasty effect of some missional Christians who are trying to care so much about what they think the world thinks that they step on their own family members. And a lot of you all who maybe even have a background in family ministry or who know people who have, know the dangers of family members who get so focused on ministry that they don't care for their own family, that they don't take care of their wives or children or husbands or whomever. In the next episode, by the way, I'm going to talk more about the positive side of what might be better posts about political topics. I think maybe we can find some common ground there. That's why this topic calls for care. I actually had to pray several times before sitting down to record, especially because it is a solo show. There are consequences, by the way, and this is a bit of a pre-warning for authors who do not think wisely about this. This is just the rules I've come up for myself. If I know someone, if I follow an author who posts badly about politics once or twice, I will snooze their feed. And you can't do that on Instagram. You can't really do that on X, but you can do that on Facebook. So I guess this is a Facebook exclusive rule. I'll snooze the feed. But if they keep it up, then they start to signal that they are going in a direction I did not expect. We'll talk about that more in a moment. I will assume that they're radicalizing and mute them. And in extreme cases, I will unfollow the author. And in more extreme cases, I will block the author. I think it's okay to do that. There's only so much time in the day. And I keep repeating this word, focus, focus, focus. And we've got to focus on the calling that God has given us and not get distracted by other things that, as Sherlock Holmes would say, clutter the brain attic. I have a little bit of a brain attic philosophy there, courtesy of Sherlock Holmes. Don't put stuff in the attic that is going to stop you from doing your job. All right. Speaking of possible dystopian environments, we have a returning sponsor here before I move to chapter 2, and that is J.A. Webb with the Seekers series. Now, I don't remember whether I've seen political posts from J.A. Webb, but my guess is he could probably post broadly about this, and it would match the stories that he is writing. It's the year 2158, and the world did not end. It was enslaved. Now comes the third installment in J.A. Webb's Seekers series, titled Interregnum, and the war in heaven, the battle in unseen places, just got real. The Seekers are humanity's last hope. Hunted by the eye of the Eternal, the Order's merciless secret police, these brave rebels have risked everything to find the lost words of Creator God, banned for generations and lost to living memory. Now, what began as a quest for truth has evolved into a desperate struggle for survival. As trapped and cornered, the Seekers must overcome not just their pursuers, but also their own doubts and fears as their own faith and even their sanity begins to unravel. There's more to that description, but watch for Interregnum, an epic dystopian thriller of deception, faith, and the fight for truth, coming soon and now available for pre-order today. That is Interregnum from the Seekers series by J.A. Webb. All those links and that cool dystopian cover there in the show notes for this episode 298. All right, gonna get a little hotter here for chapter 2. 5 cringe and corrosive ways Christian authors post about politics. Number 1, they've never before posted about these topics. When I see a post suddenly from someone who either I never saw posting much of anything, or who usually posts about the fun stuff and the book-centered stuff, or just about their own life, and the post breaks a pattern of trust between an author and readers, I react to that both as a Christian and as kind of a marketer. At least I want to market very well. Like, whoa, you just kind of broke the whole marketing rule. Like, I followed you for your recipes, and now suddenly you're talking about rocket science. Well, that's a clash in topics even before you talk about the political stuff. I was expecting wine, and I got cheap grape soda. Not cool, folks, not cool. It looks really out of place, especially when it comes in the wake of a hot controversy where I happen to know these things can kind of spread for other reasons. And so I think then this post is often, not always, but often motivated by something other than long-standing interest in U.S. policy for how to post the guards outside of the embassies in Washington, D.C. Okay, just to make something up off the top of my head. Maybe if you are interested in that topic, you post about it a lot, and now I've grown to expect it. Maybe it's why I followed you in the first place. But now you've gone off into some other place, and it's a bit of a shocker. Like, wait a minute, what are you doing? Hold on. I hope you don't keep doing that. Number 2. The post has nothing to do with the author's work. Maybe you've been doing that for a while, author, but if your novel has nothing even tentatively to do with the price of tea in China, then why are you posting about the price of tea in China? What does this have to do with the reason why I followed you? This too breaks trust. I don't even have to disagree with your take. But if I followed you for this and you start talking about that instead, that sends a signal. And I don't know if you know that the signal it is sending is, I'm bored with my job as an author and I want to change jobs. I've actually seen this for real among some Christian creators. One example is Phil Vischer, the creator of VeggieTales and What's in the Bible and other fun stories for kids. That's how I originally knew Phil Vischer. But now Phil Vischer, bless his heart, is kind of this leftist evangelical podcaster. And that's mainly what I associate with him. And it's taken a lot of work for him to change jobs. But now I'm like, okay, you're not wearing the veggie hat anymore, or the fun kids show hat, or the ukulele hat. You're wearing the I want to get onto you because you're an uncaring Christian podcaster hat. Well, be that as it may, I didn't expect you to switch hats like that. And now I don't know who you are. I don't recognize that hat. Very, very strange. Very strange. It's almost like a Groucho Marx mustache. Like, I know it's you, but it's a different version of you, and it's not why I followed you. So I think maybe I'll unfollow you now. It's broken trust. Not a sinful way, but an unwise way. It signals, hey, I'm bored with my job. I want to change jobs. Another person who's done this recently actually has been Jeremy Boring, who just within the past week or two has basically confirmed, yeah, I've stepped down from the Daily Wire. I've left the Daily Wire. He founded this podcasting pundit empire, which is really giant successful. And now he seems to go, I think I actually want to create more culture while I'm also fighting for freedom. And so it's a very interesting take. And even though the Pendragon cycle is getting really good on that streaming platform, all of his interviews now are still about politics. And yet I want to hear more from him about Pendragon cycle. Can he switch hats? Well, I'm one of those blessed few who likes both hats, and I associated him all along with both creativity and political hot takes. So I can put up with it, and I hope that other folks will feel the same, but maybe some people won't. I've seen folks complaining, why are you guys promoting this Pendragon stuff? Like, I wasn't here for mythology. Like, well, you should be there for mythology, but also in a marketing sense. I get it. All right. Number 3, they claim the post isn't political, quote unquote, isn't political, but it jolly well is political. And this happens when someone, I think maybe understandably, thinks that the post is about simple morality. Guys, I just read this headline. Everyone's talking about it. Something terrible happened in this city and someone was hurt really badly. Something has gone wrong. Whatever you think about politics, whatever side you're on, we should all agree that something has gone wrong and something needs to change this way. Well, hold on a minute. Yes, something has gone wrong. When someone gets hurt or dies, yeah, that is always sad. It really, really is. But the questions only begin from there. You haven't answered them just by observing that something went wrong. And you can't just say, well, that's not political, because it absolutely is political. Humans need to debate these things. And yes, I think it's okay for us to debate them, but the real debate needs to happen by standards of law in your country. Law does matter. You can't come in with the win button and say, well, I'm going to hit the win button because this is obviously bad and something needs to change because I feel that it's bad or I see that it's bad. Yes, maybe it is bad, but there are still ethical standards in play. There are still discussions to be had, and we still have to follow the law. Now, the best case people can make is, well, these guys broke the law, and I know which standard they broke, and I am skilled about this, and I'm a lawyer. I know what I'm talking about. But somebody watching a video on the internet does not a skilled attorney make. And skilled attorneys and judges and whatever, they can come along and debate those things. But now, again, we're talking about what hat are you trying to wear? Maybe you are a skilled attorney. Maybe that's why people followed you. But if people started following you because, well, you wrote a cool legal thriller with robots and you're a Christian, well, yeah, maybe you want to proceed with caution a little bit here. And definitely don't say, well, this isn't political. Yes, it is political. And the slogan, this isn't political, you can't touch base and then not get tagged. You're misunderstanding what politics actually are. I think when people say that, they mean, well, this doesn't have anything to do with a particular party. It's just something universal. Well, hold on. Maybe it's not. And don't act like politics are bad. We need them. We need politics here and there, maybe not on your social feed, but we do need them somewhere. Okay. And that leads me to point number 4. Should Christian authors post about politics and some cringe and corrosive takes? Number 4, authors who post these things may not even appreciate what politics are. Now here, I do feel like I have a solid foundation to critique this because I feel that I do appreciate politics. Necessary evil? Maybe. Necessary good? Most often. And if you disagree with that take, I need you to read Romans 13 and even the Apostle Paul's engagement with political culture, such as he did, and with particular attention to the way that the Apostle Paul claimed his rights as a Roman citizenship. Study a Christian worldview of civics. Study why we should vote or support the king or the monarch or whatever. Go look at Daniel's engagement with a truly heathen king, Nebuchadnezzar, in the first 4 chapters of Daniel, and see how a faithful prophet maintained biblical standards, practiced wisdom, but also served Yahweh and even a heathen king who, by the way, conquered and brought his people into exile. Daniel served Nebuchadnezzar faithfully in the king's court, maintaining his honor, following the law, speaking truth to this power, but also, and in Daniel chapter 4, loving King Nebuchadnezzar. There's a moment, you'll know it when you see it, when Nebuchadnezzar, who by the way is writing in first person in that chapter, this heathen king who later went insane and then came back, spoiler alert, came back to humanity. Nebuchadnezzar is asking Daniel, oh, the Belteshazzar, please tell me the meaning of my dream. And Daniel doesn't want to. because he's grown to love and respect the king, even this heathen king. And Daniel has to speak the truth, though. He has to speak the truth. I think Daniel liked politics. He was obviously gifted for it. And I think we should, in a sense, at least tolerate it. And I think that if you claim to hate politics or don't want to have anything to do with it anywhere, there may be a deeper problem there. And the problem may be that you're not comfortable defending or discussing ideas. Folks who claim to hate politics, but still want to comment on it when they feel strongly about it, I think they're looking for that win button where it's just a little too easy. You want to hit the win button and suddenly win the game and be right and have people praise you for having the right take the first time out the gate. Allie Beth Stuckey, who definitely engages with political topics, has a slogan, which is politics matter because policy matters because people matter. Now, what do we mean by policy there? Policy means law. Policy means the rules, the guidelines. From the sign in the front of your house that says, hey, please take your shoes off, guests. We try to keep the carpet clean around these parts, to the regulations of your neighborhood, your city, your state, your province, your nation even. That's policy. Without policy, we can't live together. We can't agree to disagree and then elect people and all of that. And the reason why policy or law matters is because people matter. So if you want to love people, then you got to at least put up with the politics that people are doing. May not mean you post that particular take on that day, but just don't go out there and say, well, I hate politics. Ew, politics, gross politics. We've got some more episodes of this podcast about that may help you there. But it gets a little bit outside the topic of fantastical stories. Number 5, and this relates to the previous. Some folks are foolishly trying to bring just love to fights that are about laws. God bless them. But these sensitive souls are not necessarily leading first with ideas. I'm not calling them stupid. I think they know this stuff and they sell themselves short. But the headlines flare up. All the cool people seem to be saying one thing all at the same time. And having shown a disinterest for law and policy day to day, suddenly their feelings are roused when they seem to see an abuse of law by someone uniformed or something like that. Now, there's definitely some abuses of law that happened, but if you're not interested in that day to day, and you haven't kind of proven that you're interested in that, why would I, as a fan, listen to your take as opposed to someone who talks about and learns these things professionally and has altogether earned my trust to have a solid and fair take on these issues that are not just about love, but are about laws and policy? I don't want someone in that area leading with their feelings. That's how you get unjust judges. That's how you get bad policymakers. That's how you get bad or even abusive law enforcement officers if they lose control of their feelings. Feelings matter, okay? I'm not going to say facts don't care about your feelings, but to a sense, facts and feelings matter. But in areas of law, as opposed to fiction or creation, facts do matter more than feelings. We want them to, especially if we ourselves get pulled over and charged with the traffic offense that we think wasn't fair. I think authors and influencers who lead with their feelings here, they mean well, but they forget, maybe because of personality, maybe because of their own focus, they forget the real realities of laws and policy, which, by the way, do relate to issues of self-defense and whether or not Han or Greedo should have shot first. Has anyone noticed? Fans have decided, no, Han shot first and it was justified, but we don't necessarily apply that in reality. Interesting observation. It seems that we ought to be a little consistent there. Christians do grace stuff. It is true. We do grace stuff and love and peace and all of that. That's good. That's good. We need that. But you can't get to the grace stuff without the law stuff. And if you're not comfortable with the law, God's law, dimly reflected by man's law, then you need to avoid commenting about law stuff. Government is law stuff. Uniformed personnel is literally law stuff. If you're not comfortable in that area, don't go into a law fight armed with just love. It's not going to work. You will be outclassed, and everybody who knows something about it is going to know it. All right, sponsor 3, it's myself. We put Realm Makers up front because we wanted to. And that means I get to keep my own sponsorship for Above the Circle of Earth. Now, this is one of those novels that actually reckons with issues of law and grace because it follows Brock and Alicia Rivers, who longed as college kids in love to be missionaries in a world ruled by a secular technocracy, the Cause. Unfortunately, in the backstory, they made a very bad mistake, ran afoul of the law, and as a result had to be exiled to Mars. So 7 years later, though, Brock and Alicia returned to Earth in pursuit of this old dream. They are called to resist this preserve system that segregates Christians and other religious people into their own preserves, and start the first space mission. But they're going to face some opposition, not only from the secular Cause, which doesn't want to have anything to do with Christians out there in outer space colonies, but also from among their own people. A shadowy threat in the Christian preserve, something I think a lot of us know about. And it leads to a lot of challenges and some pretty cool action scenes there at the end. This is the origin story of the Space Mission series, launched in all systems from Enclave Publishing, audiobook, digital, and awesome hardcover. You can get that at estephenburnett.com, and I'll have the links in the show notes. By the way, this is going to be important. Subscribe free at estephenburnett.com, my website, for updates about the Space Mission. This month, maybe by the time you hear this episode, real science fiction is coming to life. Artemis 2 from NASA, which finally remembers they're supposed to be launching stuff and go explore strange new worlds. It's going to launch probably in early February. There's going to be a 4-member astronaut crew aboard, and they're not going to land on the moon, not this time, but they are going to orbit the moon, circling around the dark side or far side of the moon, and it's going to be epic. Absolutely epic. Be the first to know the future of the space mission by subscribing free at lorehaven.com, and watch your inbox this month. Also follow me on the socials, Stephen All right, we're going to go here. I think we do need to go here. And if you disagree with anything I say here, yes, please let us know. Or especially if you do agree, also let us know. Podcast at lorehaven.com or tag us on the socials. Zach and I are really going to try to engage with that feedback that we get in next week's part 2 to conclude this little mini series here. Chapter 3, 5 slanderous and sinful ways Christian authors post about politics. All right. The first 5 generally are cringe and corrosive ways. I'm not going to unfriend you over that. I may snooze you if it's Facebook, or I may just kind of try to forget that you said that so that I myself can market you to me, author, as someone who tells stories before posting a cringe and corrosive take. All right. And, like maybe you've had to do it with me. In that case, please let me know. But now we moved into matters that are much more serious. Now we are in issues of slander and actual sin. And unfortunately, I've seen examples of this. I don't want to name names, mostly because I just muted them, or maybe muted them a long time ago. But I myself am feeling disappointed with folks who kind of changed jobs on me. And well, let's start with chapter or number 6 here. The author who does this exposes ignorance about the issues. And this is where I just have to say, some of y'all are falling for fake news or early takes or limited advantages, or frankly, you do not know the ethics or the law, and you just assume the bad kind of fantasy world where why couldn't they have just done this? Or if only they could have done that. And you just sort of make some magical scenario in your head and assume that the world is not complicated with a lot of unanswered questions and courts of law and processes that people have for generations put together in order to make the best case of a bad scenario. Do not be ignorant about these issues if you're going to post about them. Please, please, literally for Christ's sake, okay? Ignorance is no sin. I get it. We see an AI video, we follow along, we post that picture of the guy looking glammed up. A few years ago, a bunch of Christian influencers fell for a narrative. I think it was in 2020 that some high school kids from a Catholic private school were mocking or smirking at some Native American guy at a political event. And that turned out to be entirely not the case. Follow the proverb that says, the first man to state his case seems right until another comes to examine him. Okay. There is a time to speak up. Yes. But there's also time to be silent. Wait And how much more so if it's not your job to be the first on the scene with a hot take. Willful ignorance of facts is no excuse. Personally, I'll allow once or twice. 3 times I might say something if I have the time and I like you a lot and I want to see you win. But if you keep at it, I'm going to just walk away. And by the way, how much more so if you're one of those people who's like, I don't like politics, but, well, in that case, you're just outing yourself as falling for the Dunning-Kruger effect. You may be great at storytelling, but you are lousy with the political cultural engagement there. And you're trying to get authority over your fans that you have not earned. They weren't looking for that from you, or they shouldn't look for that from you. And you just need to sit down and stay in your lane. Okay. And that goes for the same. It's the same if you don't care for laws and you just want to come in with Christian love and be the good cop. Well, sometimes, guys, there needs to be bad cops. I don't mean abusive cops. I mean the guy who's going to shine a light in your face and get in there because he really, really, really needs you to tell where the kidnapper or the murderer is going to strike next. All right. That's the kind of bad cop we do need. And if you don't care for that approach, sometimes if you don't care for laws and justice there, even if you say you do, you're just meddling. And another proverb, 26:17, warns about people who meddle in quarrels who are not their own. I really think Proverbs could fix a lot of these problems, by the way, lest we fall into sin and slander. There's another factor here, and Zach may want to say more about this in our next episode. And this is number 7. Some folks are following influencers, especially on the social media scenes, who are literally taking bribes to post things. Okay, look, I understand sponsored posts, and I understand if you post a lot about XYZ, and then the person who makes XYZ goes, hey, we like what you're saying about XYZ. Here's $100 if you'll say something about our next model of XYZ. Like, that's a little different. Exodus 32:8 warns against those who accept bribes unjustly. And if you don't disclose that, I think that is unethical. And I don't know anybody in my scene who's doing that, but I do know that paid influencers are taking actual cash for their posts, okay? And that includes ideological motivation. And how do I know? Some folks on ethical, conservative, lawful good, x.com have outed this. They say, I was approached by this group to say something nasty about this one guy or positive about this other guy, and I'm not going to do it. And here was their name, and here's what they asked for, and here's the screenshot of how they contacted me, and I'm not going to do it. Like, I respect you guys too much. I'm not going to be steered like that. I appreciate folks giving away the game there. Little glimpse behind the scenes. However, even if it's not actual money to your account in exchange for a friendly or nasty word, I think that some influencers, it's clear, are trading in alternative currencies. You don't need to accept cold, hard cash in order to sway your opinion. There are some alt currencies out there, as we know, some crypto. One of them is called emo coin. I just made it up. Maybe real. I don't know. It's where whoever has the most emotions wins. And another is called trend bucks. And if you follow the trend, then your numbers go up and to the right. The balance sheet looks great. And all the people who matter like you, or so the lore masters say. In either case, these kinds of influencers are being steered. Yeah. And they may also steer you, because then you see all of those likes and all those comments, some of which may even be human. Don't be steered by promises of popularity. Do not take emotional bribes. Because I think, having been warned, if people keep doing that, if Christian authors keep doing that, well, now it does become an issue of sin. It becomes an issue of willful ignorance and accepting bribes. Number 8. This relates to earlier, but this is more about the pattern of folks who do this. And I have seen specifically Christian authors attempt to post this way and just be moralistic grandstanders. They're not looking for engagement. They're not opening comments and saying, hey, what do you think about this? They're not tunneling under to get to the moral or worldview issues beneath the hot headline. They're going out there and trying to spam the win button over and over. And whether it's the algorithm or whether it's just their own personal algorithm, that's all you see from these folks. Like, I know some guys, who have like fantasy novels out, and yet I only see them post about the wrong political takes, and they foreclose discussion. They say, well, I don't want to talk about this. I just want to be right. Not cool. That's bad leadership. It's also reckless. If you put on a neon glowing jersey for a particular idea or moral belief, and you run out onto the field of ideas and then start to grandstand, and you get upset when other people wearing other jerseys go, okay, he wants to play, and then they come at you all in a line, you can't shriek and call foul just because you signaled that you want to play the game, and then other people say, okay, cool, we've been playing this game for a while, here's a new player, let's go. All right, that's the best case scenario. I know some of these players fight dirty, but do not run onto the field and shriek at opposing team players just because you didn't know what you were getting into. I actually saw a Christian journalist and pundit who was engaging some of these folks on Instagram, like fashion influencers and lifestyle bloggers and stuff, who posted about a hot take recently. And she said, well, okay, I want to quote you in my story. What do you have to say? And the person tried to say, like, please don't quote me in the story. Like, yeah, that was like, you don't have to quote me in the story. And the Christian writer had to say, yeah, that's not how this works. You said a public comment, you took a stand, and so I'm going to quote you in the story. So beware of the consequences, folks. You do not get to spam the win button and be right automatically because you feel very strongly or you have that one Bible verse in mind and you don't know what you're getting into. Just stay off the field if you're not prepared for it. All right, please. This is just wisdom as well as righteousness. All right. All right, number 9 and 10 are the strong ones, I promised at the top. You thought it was strong now. And let me just reiterate this. I'm not saying this to get at anybody, and I don't even have specific names in mind when I say this. This is for the sake of unity. It is for freedom that Christ died. It's for maintaining the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace, okay? I don't mean that peace forecloses debate or discussion. In fact, sometimes a good, honest, loving, respectful brawl can lead to more peace. Some of my favorite pundits actually become friends, even though they're on other sides, They help each other out, even while they disagree. I tend to follow those people because I think, okay, they're doing this right. They're not slandering other pundits. They're just disagreeing with them. But this is happening, number 9. Even worse, some authors are slandering their spiritual family. And I have seen specific cases. I've tried to kind of blank their names in my head, kind of blur them out. But I've seen what they've said. And I've seen that they say, if you believe this, I don't want you to buy my books. I want to have nothing to do with you. I'm putting a mark on you, and I will not engage in trade with you because you're just too evil. No, you must not do this. Not for a brother or sister in Christ over a disagreement about secondary issues. This is wrong biblically. We've got to discuss these things with people, not condemn them for issues that have nothing to do with salvation. And by the way, even the most extreme case of church discipline in 1 Corinthians 5, whereas the Apostle Paul said, a man has his father's wife, brothers, this must not be. You need to discipline him. You need to put him out. He's not in the church. The Apostle Paul doesn't even say then that this guy is not a Christian. He's evil. Have nothing to do with him. Don't even look his direction. Okay. What you're doing there, if you're an author is doing this, is shunning. This is bad. This is that kind of cultural fundamentalist thing that we've heard about from those bad churches, right? Where they put you out because you listened to the wrong kind of music or you read the Harry Potter book and they treated you as if you're scum. I don't want us treating each other as if we're scum. That is terrible. And not only that, it doesn't work. You are sabotaging yourself, author, if you treat your fans or other Christians like scum because they have a different take on this. Big studios do this or have tried to do this against their own fans sometimes. They're going after fans that may not even exist yet in some imaginary future. And maybe they're trying to trade in that alt currency of emo coin or trend bucks or woke bucks or whatever. Not good. Their numbers go down. Their fans mock them. They lose money. People wash out of the business. It's not good. They fail hard. We're only just now beginning to see this, and some of these big studios are only starting to turn it around, hopefully, after losing hundreds of millions of dollars sometimes. But more importantly, I don't even care if you got rich doing this, okay? If I see an author doing this, I think it's almost gone too far. I'm not even going to post a comment because I'm too busy to deal with your drama. Okay. Obviously, something's gone wrong with you and you want to destroy yourself. Why? Why would you do that? Why would you cut out your own foundation and slander brothers and sisters? My brothers and sisters, this thing must not be so. Okay. To quote some New Testament letter language here. And that's closely related to number 10. And this, I think, is so far, I've discovered it doesn't get much worse than this. The top most slanderous and sinful way that Christian authors may post about politics. And I have seen instances of this. Worst of all, some are pronouncing against other believers threats of hell and judgment. This is a great sin, and it bears direct condemnation in the most general sense, not about the person, because that's the problem, right? I'm not judging the person as if no, I'm not going to hell, bud. You are. Like, no. The only way to win that little game is never to play. You don't get to threaten someone with divine judgment over non-salvific issues. You will not do this and consider yourself a person whose judgment is worth paying attention to. You don't get to slander other believers like that just because they disagree on these issues, like how or whether the civil magistrate should enforce laws on the books. That is an absolute non-starter for me. And this goes back to long-standing conviction I have, going back again to the bad kind of cultural fundamentalist days. Do you guys, if you're listening, or maybe just fans who wonder about this too, are listening, but do authors who say these things or creators who say these things, do they recognize what they sound like? They're literally doing the fire and brimstone pulpit pounding thing against other believers. These threats must not be so. And for me, you do that, you're an automatic unfollow and a stern rebuke like this on the podcast. I don't want to do that. Guys, if you see me do that, pull me back, okay? Not because hell isn't real. It absolutely is. God's righteous wrath is certainly due against non-believers who reject Jesus Christ, his salvation and his lordship. That's what hell is for. Up until that point, guys, there's a lot of wiggle room. People may lead a terrible life and then genuinely convert at the last moment, okay? And that's not up to us to decide. It is up to God. All we can do is bring in the law and gospel. And if you bring in the wrong law, oh, you are on very thin ice, my friend. And really, I do want you to stay my friend, okay? But I almost even don't need to block those folks, because this is like kind of the fully metastasized version of the corrosive and slanderous political hot take from anybody, not just an author. I think if you're going to go that far, something really has gone wrong in your soul. You are now on a vengeance quest. I no longer can think of you as a creator. You're just a vengeful actor, almost a kind of spiritual mercenary, and something's going wrong. I don't want to psychoanalyze. All I can say is the facts that are in front of me, but something's gone wrong if you think that you have the moral right at all, what is really the gall, to pronounce or warn of eternal judgment against Christians who only disagree with you about politics or law enforcement or who you should vote for or whose administration figure you support. Any of that stuff, that is just, well, let's just say it's bad juju, okay? And if you keep it up, actually, the threat really does rebound, actually, because someone who continues in a practice of sinning does fall under the warnings of the Apostle John, who says, no one born of God continues in a practice of sinning. Okay, don't practice the sin of slander because you might actually get good at it. Okay, there's marketing reasons, there's biblical reasons, and there are practical reasons of wisdom to watch carefully what you say about these political hot takes. Again, not saying don't say them at all, but if you can't say something biblically wise based on facts, based on truth, and based on love of your brother or sister, even if he or she disagree with you, please, Christian author, anybody, don't say anything at all. All right, Calm Station. I really would like to light this one up because maybe I went too far. Maybe you have a take. Maybe you need to push back and I need to hear it. Keep it, however, oddly enough, politics free. I don't want to hear about parties or platforms or personalities here. only focus on the topics and the moral themes that are deep in the foundation. Here's my question. When your favorite authors suddenly post hot takes about the latest controversial headlines or violent acts, how do you feel? Let's focus on the feelings there, even as we are debating the facts. Next on Fantastical Truth, yes, this is a heated topic, necessarily so. But now as we move toward spring, let's attempt a thaw. Lord willing, as I mentioned, Zackary Russell will return to the studio for an interactive follow-up and a discussion about how we as fans can hope better from our favorite authors. Should we expect them to shut up and write? Or can we hope for more thoughtful and gracious engagement that will not divide wrongly the body of Christ, but will bring us better together even if we do disagree? I really think we need to focus on that. Guys, stories don't happen unless there is some conflict. So I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm above all the drama. I'm not. We're all in the drama. We're all in this drama together. Let's be honest about that. Let's be honest about the facts. Let's be honest about law versus grace. Let's be honest about our own callings, and particularly our calling to love and serve one another, even as we might disagree about these big topics. Let's continue to seek and find, for Christ's sake, his fantastical truth.